All right, so the PGA Tour and Grant Horvat are butting heads once again, and this time you have Grant Horvat turning down an invitation to play in an actual PGA Tour event, and all of this is because he's saying he's not able to film it for his own YouTube channel. And fans have very mixed reactions over who is in the right here. You know, on one side, you've got the PGA Tour saying we can't have other cameras there when we have these very expensive broadcast rights. And then you have the other side of saying, hey, listen, why in the first place would you invite a YouTuber? It's because you want to grow your platform. You want more eyeballs, and you're not getting that if you're not allowing him to do what he does best. So we're going to talk about exactly what Grant said. You know, he's now released his own YouTube video on this detailing what he said, and we're going to break all of that down. We're also going to talk about on the PGA Tour side and even our own experience, Mike, as creators and what we've done with the PGA Tour, having an intimate knowledge of how difficult it can be to work with them on some of these things, and contrasting this directly with what Grant and some of the other big creators are doing, not only with competitors like Liv, but brand new competitors like Barstool, who's going to be announcing their biggest event ever for creators. All of these things are things that are going to cut into the attention that the PGA Tour has if they're not able to work out a resolution, which, of course, Grant even hinted at that there might be a resolution coming, which I want to dig into as well. So we're going to break all of this down, see who's right, who's wrong. Is there a way that we can resolve all this in just a second? But first, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Titleist. And guys, the new Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X are the #1 ball at this week's Open Championship. And here's what's new with the new ball. The Titleist R&D, they asked players what they wanted in the new Pro V1 and Pro V1X, and they said more spin on scoring shots into the green. And both models give you increased spin and provide more distance off the tee with more control on irons, which is exactly what guys are going to be needing taking on a very difficult Portrush this week. And me personally, I've been playing the Pro V1 almost my entire golf career. It's the ball I rely on. I absolutely love the soft feel, the trajectory, everything that I get out of the Pro V1. So, guys, go to Titleist.com. Everything you need to know about the brand new 2025 Pro V1 and Pro V1X are there. If you get the opportunity, get in there. There's also a spot where you can schedule a fitting. Get fit, try the different balls for yourself, see which one fits your game, and trust me, once you do, you are definitely not going to be looking back on that.
Did you save your Pro V1 from your break par round?
Yes,
you have it saved?
I have it. I have my first ever time breaking par, and of course playing my Pro V1. That was.
Hope you saved it.
Yeah, and look, I'm wearing the hat because it happened at Mammoth Dunes.
That's it.
So incredible. So anyway, let's get into this. Let's talk a little bit about what was said. If you missed any of this, it hit the news cycle pretty hard yesterday. Again, just seeing the idea, because it seems like the pinnacle, of what a lot of YouTubers have aspired to is this idea that being able to kind of the validation of being an invite to play in a real PGA Tour event. Sure. Not only that, we've got the background here where you had guys who were like walking that line of being tour players and YouTubers, guys like Wesley Bryan, who recently we did a whole show on talking about how, the back and forth of being, are they in, are they out because they played in a live, event. That's a whole, you got that whole background in there too as well.
100%. And gloves are coming off on this episode, Frank, because I know there's a lot of people that are kind of heated on both sides of this debate.
Absolutely.
I'm going to come out of the gate before you say anything and kind of say good for Grant.
Okay.
Good for Grant here. Grant's reached, I believe, the pinnacle of YouTube golf. He's filmed with Tiger Woods. He's been everywhere. He can knock on a door and no one's going to turn him down. He is at the pinnacle. I don't believe he needs the Barracuda.
It's true. He is now in a position where he can turn down the PGA Tour, 100%. Which is a very privileged position, and it's a position that he's earned.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. And I want to kind of break into that in a second from a standpoint of a business decision. Was it a wise decision for him to turn this down? First, let's talk about what exactly from his mouth, what Grant said. So he put out a tweet immediately kind of responding to it and giving justification to his decision. And what he said was, unfortunately, I will not be playing in a PGA Tour event. The rules and regulations around PGA Tour tournament play will not allow us to film. The only reason I was in the position to receive an invite like this is because of YouTube and you all watching the videos. So if I'm going to play, we want to film it. I'm hopeful this won't always be the case. I would be honored to play in a PGA Tour event and bring you all along in the future. Huge thank you to the Barracuda for the invite and belief in YouTube golf. So
great.
he's not beating around the bush. The only reason is because he is not permitted to film. Of course, we're going to talk about why he's not permitted to film. The PGA Tour, I think broadcast rights for the PGA Tour are just shy of $1 billion. So there's a reason that's going to be very heavily protected. And it is important to note that this is not a rule that the PGA Tour just put in place for Grant. It's not a rule that was a kind of a retribution or like trying to kind of get back at him for what he's been doing with Live and the duels. This was in place for a long time. Like I said, we've experienced it ourselves in attempting to film some of our own content at PGA Tour events. So just know that this is nothing new. Again, Grant kind of going even deeper than that tweet. He put out a video on social media, on YouTube the other day, and just kind of the gist of it. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, I'll give you kind of the meat of it of what he said. He said, "I know there's going to be a lot of disappointed people out there. I'm disappointed as well, but we're going to explain exactly why we couldn't make it happen. The reason I will not be playing at a PGA Tour event is due to the rules and regulation involving media rights and filming during tournament play of a PGA Tour event. And basically that means I was not going to be allowed to film my round during tournament play. And for me, personally, doing YouTube for a living and wanting to document everything I do, this is the reason we got the invite in the first place, was because of YouTube and because of the amazing experiences I get to share with you guys. But I am hopeful that sometime in the future, we will be able to play in a PGA Tour event. I don't know what it'll be, maybe the Barracuda next year, and document and film the entire thing to share with you guys. Because I know what I'd be feeling teeing it up at a PGA Tour event, and boy, would I want that on camera." So he's going back to his fans and saying, hey, you guys are the reasons I got this invite, which can spark its own side debate. There are always going to be a crew of people who are going to be against these sponsors, invitations, exemptions on their own, going to non-pros. There's going to be people saying you're stealing a spot away from a guy who could be possibly in competition and earning his full tour card and all those things. There's going to be a camp with that. I get it. And then the counterpoint to that, because there's always a counterpoint to everything, is the PGA Tour and these events are businesses. People like the Barracuda, right? The Barracuda puts up all that money in order to get the eyeballs that come with it, right? So to them, it's a smarter move to put somebody in there who is going to, no matter how he performs, bring more eyeballs.
Yeah, I mean, it blows my mind because the Barracuda is the one who is funding this event, right? They're basically sponsoring it, and they're the prize pool and all of that, right? But still, they can't get through to the PGA Tour. I feel like, honestly, do you think the PGA Tour will ever budge on this?
I think the PGA Tour will budge on this.
You think so?
Absolutely, I do. And I think what's going to force that hand is if we ever come to some sort of eventual agreement with Live. Because Live, we'll talk about in a second, Live swings the pendulum the other way.
They're all in.
They're letting content, with all that type of stuff. But interestingly, they have not allowed anyone to play in a Live event and film it.
Pro-Ams, I think. I've seen that, but not.
But I'm saying, you're not playing on Sunday, right?
Right.
The other thing is they created the duels, which we'll talk about. Maybe the PGA Tour can do something like this, where it's not quite that event. But I think if what we get into here in a second, if the PGA Tour does see some of this writing on the wall, I think when a lot of this is legacy stuff. This is the way you're still going back to an older form of media, the way things were done. I think if the PGA Tour starts to see the writing on the wall of how these things can change and how, if they don't capture this attention from this huge growing audience that is YouTube golf, and it starts to go elsewhere, when they renegotiate, maybe they're locked into a deal right now that they can't get out of, but when they renegotiate broadcasting rights, I could see them putting some caveats in that allow for certain things like this. We'll talk about that in a second, but first let's talk about some of these fan reactions. Very, very, very mixed and polarized.
I read those comments.
So I'm just looking at cherry picking a few of them on Twitter. I'm seeing comments like, dude, people want to see how you stack up. Not everything has to be for numbers on YouTube. Just play some golf, man. Then another guy, other side of the coin, says, respect the holdout. It's better for all parties involved that Grant gets to film. They will cave when Grant starts bringing viewers over to Live. PGA needs Grant more than Grant needs the PGA, especially if he can't film. Then another one. The level of entitlement among Generation Z is truly staggering. This dude got an exemption into a PGA Tour event, after promoting their competitor that he didn't earn and just turned it down at the last minute because they wouldn't allow him to create a horrendous precedent. Wow. Then another one said, translation, I will make more money on YouTube. One guy saying. And this is something that I think needs to be thought of and identified. Yes, I understand that that's a shot to a certain extent taken at Grant, but you got to a certain extent, put yourself in his shoes, right? Put yourself in Grant's shoes and understand that they're very fortunate shoes, and he'll admit that. He knows that because of his viewership, he's very fortunate for these invites, but he still has, this is his career. He's never going to make a career on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, no,
okay?
right.
And I don't think he aspires to that. So his career, at the end of the day, what keeps the lights on for him and his family is YouTube. And there's something to think about like this. There's an opportunity cost for everything that you do. Take, for example, let's say Grant takes this opportunity and goes and plays in the Barracuda, right? There's a very, very good chance he misses the cut.
Most likely,
okay?
right?
And this is nothing against him. This is more so of the strength of field of PGA.
Right. He's not a competition golfer.
PGA Tour is a different animal, right? Let's say Grant does this. He goes there. He commits to the Barracuda. He's not able to make any content out of it, and he misses the cut. That week just cost him a lot of money.
Yep.
It cost him the money to get there. It cost him the opportunity cost of could have been doing something else. All those things. He didn't make a dime. He lost money on that deal. And all for what? To be able to say he played in a PGA Tour tournament, but not be able to create any content out of it.
Right.
You put yourself in your shoes. What would you do? Versus where Grant's at right now. He could go anywhere in the world that same week. He could film a YouTube video, and based on his views and just knowing the way that YouTube pays out, I can guarantee you he's making a minimum of $20,000 that week.
Sure.
Minimum of 20. That's without even
He probably
extra
makes that on the
sponsors.
duels videos that sit on his channel.
AdSense alone,
Sure.
he's on making 1 to 2 million views on these videos, $20,000 plus. That's probably me underestimating it. So you think about that and you think, from a business standpoint, what honestly would you do? Would you go and play in this event and possibly miss the cut and it costs you money? Or would you just say no and the opportunity cost and go and do something else elsewhere? Remember, when he makes these videos, he also has a crew to pay. He's got a team. He's got editors. He's got videographers. He's got people with him. So in a lot of ways, it starts to make me wonder, like, this is his job. What kind of decision would you expect if you're not allowing him to do his job?
Yeah. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall when he reached out to Phil for his advice on it. Hey, Phil, what should I do? I'll tell you what to do.
And Phil likewise might say, hey, listen, this is a big part of Phil's original complaint with the PGA Tour was how locked down guys were from creating content. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's contrast this with LIV. LIV has a very different strategy when it comes to this. They have been very wide open in embracing YouTube. Not only now do you have guys like Bryson, who's arguably the face of LIV, having the biggest golf YouTube channel, but now we're seeing Phil Mickelson and others. LIV is doing a hard push to make every team is now creating their own YouTube channel. They're creating their own content around it, and they've now spun off the duels, which also rubbed the PGA Tour the wrong way. We did a whole podcast on that. You saw certain guys getting locked out, right, because of it. But the strategy is vastly different. Yes, the PGA Tour has had some creator events, but they're not YouTube centric. What I mean by that is they're taking creators and they're putting it into their normal business model and putting it on television.
Yep.
And
there's no players involved.
Okay, viewership, but there's no players involved. But they're not leaning into YouTubers. They're inviting YouTubers into their platform, not bringing their platform into YouTube.
But
that's the difference.
That's the difference. I think that the way LIV is doing it, they're doing it for a YouTube audience, as opposed to like you're saying. I think they brought the foreplay guys in PGA Tour to sell their merch in the tents. That's it. The good. I'm sure there's collaborations.
Yep, there's merch in there. Yep, absolutely.
I think Chad Mum's series Full Swing is another avenue PGA Tour is going to get it, the Netflix audience, a new audience. So I think they're trying. The Creator Classic, I think, is a waste. Not for me at least. I don't think it's doing the same thing, because I think what people like about the duels is the fact that they're seeing the real players play with the YouTube creators.
Yes, and also the fact that it is on YouTube. This is what I understand. Like, there is a certain big audience that the PGA Tour needs to realize that are not going to necessarily leave YouTube. I know what they want. They want to take those YouTube personalities and bring them into their platform. But the reality is there's a lot of people that YouTube is where they're going to consume, and Liv has understood that, and Liv has put very YouTube-specific content like the duels directly on YouTube. You don't see Liv going out and putting that out on a broadcast, right?
Right.
So, it makes you wonder, like, what now is the answer to this from the PGA Tour side? But I'm also keeping leaning in, like, even further of just looking at, you could say, and there's going to be the argument that's going to be made, and I can even see it, people talk about it in the comments, so probably be a comment or two about it, is that there's this PGA Tour doesn't need anybody argument. The PGA Tour has, admittedly, seen some of its best viewership ever this year.
It has.
They have a growth in viewership. So they may say, like, hey, this is working for us. We don't need you guys and whatever. But the tide can shift faster than you think. And the reality is there's now a competition for viewership and eyeballs in a way that there's never been before. You now have guys like they're going to have the Barstool event, which is the Barstool Sports Internet Invitational, which just posted their field, which is an incredibly huge field. Grant is in it. All like the biggest creators are in this thing. And this is something that undoubtedly will be on YouTube and all, social media forward. It's not a traditional broadcast. And the more that these develop, the more time it could potentially take away from people watching actual broadcasts.
Right.
So the tour is only seeing this tremendous, growth in competition, and they just feel like they're in this saying, like, they're just not going to adapt their own policies for that. It's like, conform to us, or you're in or you're out. Yeah. And I think that's something that could hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, I think so. And it's crazy to think that their viewership has gone up, and in what I am calling, I believe this is a post-Tiger era we're in now.
Sure, because Tiger's not playing.
I think he's post-Tiger. So to have arguably the biggest name that's ever going to live in golf no longer a factor, and it's having its viewership, and people have left and they've split and they're doing well. I don't know, man. I just don't know if they're ever going to come together.
I think what the tour is dramatically benefiting from is the fact that the overwhelming growth of golf of the last 5 years is a bigger interest. You also have the phenomenon that is Scotty Scheffler. You've got these great storylines with Rory McIlroy. You still have a fantastic product on the PGA Tour, and I do not want to take any of that away from it. I still watch it every week.
Absolutely.
Right? I'm watching it. Right. The viewership is there. What I'm saying is, planning for the future, there are just a few small things that just feel like just fumbling the ball. Just like the smallest little thing, like the slightest little tweak could make this right. And I want to talk about that here in a second. I want to talk about, is there a way that the PGA Tour can still make the best of both worlds? And as Grant hinted at, maybe next year. Because I got to imagine Grant and his agents are in deep talks with the PGA Tour of where things are headed. And there's got to be some indication, whether that be getting, a merger with Liv or maybe new broadcast deals. But there's got to be a way they can make this work. So let's get into that. First, I want to do a quick word from our sponsor, and we're going to talk about how they can make this work.
All right, guys, the FootJoy Premiers are easily one of my favorite golf shoes on the market. I mean, not only are these things clean and classy, but these shoes come with that premium leather and those details for that iconic look. And in fact, this is the open week, and they just landed in the mail. Like, I actually got them in my car. I got to bring them up. The Harris Tweeds. Oh, yeah. The Premiers with that. So what would you call that material?
Tweed.
Tweed. The tweed. There you go. But the look of these things, incredible. You got to check them out, especially the ones for this week. And what makes these so good is the comfort. The Versatrax outsole, it's engineered with this traction element to create an outsole that's perfect for on-course performance. We're always on our feet out there. We're always filming and walking. Some days we're doing 36. And with those Eco Plush fit beds that sit underneath your heel, I mean, it gives you that all-day underfoot comfort, and that's so key. So you got to check out the entire lineup because there's so many different variations of these Premiers, and they're like the coolest shoes on the market, guys. So go check out the entire lineup at FootJoy.com.
All right, so what is the answer to this? Is there a way that this ship can be righted and that they can both win, meaning the PGA Tour and whether it be Grant or whoever the top creator is at the moment who's getting these invitations? And Grant kind of, like I said, hinted at that and hinting like there might be a way they could work this out, work it out for next year. I said before, I won't get into it again, the whole idea of these broadcasts, I understand that. The PGA Tour the broadcast rights for the PGA Tour, I think, were $750 million. And as part of that, they lock it down that no one else can film. Fun fact here. If you even go to a PGA Tour event and you film it with your phone, they will give some allowance of posting that, just for your own personal.
Yep.
But you can't even post what you did there as a clip for any type. If it's tied to any type of commercial, you're going to get a takedown letter. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I mean that even if you as a creator, and we know that from firsthand experience, because we've had plenty of media passes to go to PGA Tour events and things like that. However, though we are allowed to take photos, as part of that, we're allowed to write about it on our website. We can talk about it here on the podcast. We can't film any of it. We even had an opportunity, I know it was 7 years ago, but we played in the Pro-Am. You played with Francisco Molinari at Bay Hill.
2018.
And even that, I was barely allowed to film anything. I think we were allowed to film like 60 total seconds of playing, and that was just you.
That was my playing.
Couldn't even film the professionals. And we still had to pay the PGA Tour a licensing fee just to put it on YouTube. So this is something, like I said, it's there. I get it's for a reason, but there's got to be what I consider a little bit of common sense applied. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I would say as a way to possibly solve this is when these broadcast deals are restructured, looking forward and knowing that this is going to be something that's going to be a regular basis, you're going to, whether you agree with this or you don't because of the spot that it's taken or whatever, you're going to see more sponsors exemptions going to creators. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, this is a money game. You have a ROI. I should call it an ROI game more than anything. These title sponsors invest a lot of money in order for their own marketing, goals of being able to, have those eyeballs and things like that. And for a lot of them, it's going to pay many dividends more to have a famous YouTuber take an exemption spot than it is to have, a guy who's just on that line of just trying to Monday qualify and no one knows that guy.
Yeah.
Maybe people will know him in the future, but you get what I'm saying. Whether you like that or not, from a business understanding, that's why that happens. But what I would say is, when they restructure these deals, why is it, and this is an answer I need to know, you guys tell me in the comments what you think on this, why is it that Grant should not be allowed to film, but have some sort of embargo date, posting deadline, timeline, where he's not allowed to then post that video until whatever you want, a month later? Put it a month later, so it's still relevant.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, part of that broadcast is they'll broadcast it live, and then they'll always broadcast it again, for different time zones later. Mm-hmm. But by a week later, a week after the Barracuda, everyone knows who won. I can't imagine they're making much money off that broadcast after the fact.
Right.
The return on that investment has to drop off a cliff. So why can he then not post his round 3-4 weeks later as a recap? Also, keep this in mind. Grant, most likely, if he played in the Barracuda, you're only going to see a handful of shots from him.
Yeah, right.
Right? On the regular broadcast, it's going to be the guys who are in the lead. It's going to be those. You may cut over to Grant for a couple of shots here and there, but it's not going to satisfy his viewers, the people who are used to seeing him every single shot and work his way around a golf course. So there's even overlap there that it won't be overlap because of the fact that he won't be part of the broadcast. So to me, one solution is rework these broadcasting rights where you're saying there's going to be a cutoff date, and then after that, people are allowed to post it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's interesting, man. I like it, actually. Think about it, because you're right. I mean, at that point, why wouldn't the Barracuda next year just say, this to the PGA Tour? Because, hey, we lost, our shining star, what we thought was going to be great for our brand because of you. So we're no longer a part of this. I don't know how long their contracts are. That, but I could see that maybe happening. And, I think that's a great idea. Just put it out 30 days later.
Not only do I see that happening, I see a company like the Barracuda, right, saying at some point, let's put the numbers down, right? And let's look at the ROI of saying, do we want to host a PGA Tour event with traditional broadcast? That might cost them, let's say it costs them on the low end, $15 million to do. Versus, let's take $3 million and let's do the Barstool Invitational.
Yeah.
Let's either sponsor that for $3 million and probably get as many eyeballs, or when these companies are hosting their own events, let's take our own and personally invite a bunch. They can invite pros. They can invite YouTubers. They're almost creating their own tour. You know what I mean? Maybe it's like a one-stop tour, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like the PGA Tour is leaving a loophole open where other people can say like, my dollar is going to go further doing this than that. Now, I want to speak to one other thing. Like the guy who said, this sets a horrendous precedent. I get it. If you got to a point, I could see how it could get messy. Mm-hmm. If you had, let's say, a bunch of guys who are playing in the Barracuda, which is also an alternate event for the most part, and you're going to have a lot of guys who are not household names yet, and might be seeing the writing on the wall for themselves and saying, like, the benefit of creating a YouTube channel. What if you had 25, 30 guys in the field all brought their own cameramen out there and they're all filming their own content as they go?
Yeah.
I don't know if that could get messy.
Right.
And if it's just
they do that for the Creator Classic.
Yeah, I guess they do.
Each person has their own little...
I guess it could happen. So I'm not saying it couldn't, but it is something to think about.
Yeah. The
other thing that I would say is possible answer to this is why can't the PGA Tour do what Liv is doing with the duels? And if at the end of the day they're hard and fast that they don't want anyone filming at their broadcasted, main, scheduled events, create an event. Again, forget the Creator Classic for a second because that's part of their traditional broadcast. Yeah. Create an event specifically for YouTube, just like how Liv did the duels. They could come up with their own type of thing. This way they can leverage that YouTube audience. Have these events not be part of the traditional broadcast. Have, one of them is on Grant's channel. The next one's on the Bryan Brothers channel. Just alternate that and just take that, from Liv's playbook. Why not?
They're just not learning. Did you hear they're bringing the match back again? Bryson Brooks versus Scotty and Rory?
Yeah.
Why?
The match viewership has dropped dramatically every year. I don't know. And I just wonder if it's so much of it is just, this is the way we've always done it, so let's keep doing it. Legacy type of thing.
But I like your ideas. I mean, maybe they will bring a duels type of thing. I mean, a Grant with Scotty versus, JT and, someone else.
Right.
That'd be cool.
And just this way, you're sidestepping the entire broadcast thing. And I get it. Like I said, going back to what Phil had said was that the PGA Tour so much controlled this, it even controlled what was happening outside of broadcast, of what guys could share and do on their own YouTube channels. And I don't know the intricacies of that. I'm not a lawyer. I haven't seen those contracts. But to me, it's indication that the writing's on the wall. When these contracts are renegotiated with broadcast or wherever, PGA Tour's got to change something. They're going to fall behind. Yeah. They're going to fall behind. And again, my own personal take on it, my own opinion, for any of the people who are saying like, oh, he should just suck it up and just play in this, I like you, I got to take Grant's side a little bit on this, because at the end of the day, knowing his motivation is not to get his PGA Tour card. You're not going to see Grant go get his card and drop YouTube. YouTube is the career for him. It's the path forward. It's all those types of things. So at the end of the day, as much as I'm sure it would be a moment of personal pride for him to play in a PGA Tour event, if you think about it from a business standpoint, from the fact that it's his career, to me it would be silly for him to go and play an event, possibly miss the cut, not only not make anything that week, but have it cost him something versus putting his time elsewhere. Because the other thing too is, the lifespan of a creator is sometimes shorter lived. You got to go out and do it while you can. You don't know how long you're going to have, and hopefully he'll be blessed with attention for a long time.
Right.
But you don't know how long you're going to have that.
Yeah, it doesn't last long.
So get out there and keep doing what is, effectively moving your career forward, which is making videos.
That's it.
That's what he does. So let us know your own take on it. Do you agree with Grant? Do you agree with the PGA Tour? Is there a way that they can find common ground? Post them in the comments below. Make sure you guys subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you in the next one.